Hello, my name's Zach. The European colonies in Southeast Asia became independent in the post-World War II period. I will be taking you through the independence of the Philippines, the problems that Burma, Malaysia, and Singapore faced during this post-World War II era, as well as Indonesia's struggle for independence from the Dutch. The independence of the Philippines was a complicated journey. In 1901, under Aguinaldo, the Filipinos pledged allegiance to the U.S. after being captured by U.S. forces. The Philippines would remain a U.S. territory until the U.S. granted them independence on July 4th in 1946. The Filipinos moved this date from July 4th to June 12th and renamed it Philippine Republic Day, showing how they disagreed with the U.S. oppression. Representatives from the U.S. and the Philippines signed a Treaty of General Relations between the two governments. This treaty provided for the recognition of the Republic of the Philippines, as well as the end of American oppression over the islands. So, do you think the Filipinos really gained complete independence? What do you think? Answer me! That's right! The Filipinos did not gain complete independence. The Bell Trade Act required that U.S. citizens be granted equal access to Philippine minerals, forests, and other natural resources. Further U.S. oppression and manipulation would later be shown. The Filipinos wanted to rebuild their economy in order to restore Manila, which was destroyed during World War II. The U.S. promised the Filipinos $600 million in war damages, but they insisted that the Filipinos approve the Bell Act in order to get this money. The Bell Act would also establish free trade between the U.S. and the Philippines for 8 years, followed by slowly increasing tariffs. The U.S. also wanted to maintain its military presence in the Philippines. With the onset of the Cold War, the U.S. needed to be able to protect its interests. China and the Soviet Union were two powers that had bases close to the allies of the U.S. and natural resources vital to the U.S. So, the U.S. demanded a 99-year lease on its naval bases in the Philippines. These bases would be sources of conflict between the U.S. and the Philippines. Many Filipinos felt that the American bases showed imperialism. As a result, agreements were made to shorten the terms of the lease, and the U.S. eventually gave up both bases in 1991. After World War II, the people of Burma struggled between repressive military governments and pro-democracy governments. Japan was in control of Burma, and they ruled with a repressive military government. What does this repressive government mean? Can you tell me? Yes! Repressive means that they put down opposition with force. Don't oppose me! Ah! With the aid of the British, Burma was able to drive out the Japanese. They were going to become independent, however, they were stopped when their army leader, Aung San, and his cabinet were gunned down. This led to General Ne Win taking over Burma and ruling with a repressive military government. Even after Win left, Burma was still ruled with this repressive military government. The Japanese conquered the Malay Peninsula during World War II. This peninsula was formerly ruled by the British. The British tried to reconquer the peninsula, which led to resistance from ethnic groups. This effort against colonialism from the British was called the Malayan Emergency. Malay was among the world's leading producers of rubber, tin, and palm oil. Competition for Malay's rubber markets meant that the profitability of the rubber industry depended on keeping wages low. This led to poverty for some Malayans. After Japan surrendered to the U.S. in 1945, there was a period in Singapore when the British had not yet taken over, and the control of Japan over Singapore was rather weak. This led to a period of looting and violence. As a result of World War II, a lot of destruction was caused to the infrastructure of Singapore, including its electricity and water supplies, telephone services, and harboring facilities. So, do you think any more economic problems resulted in Singapore due to World War II? Yes! As a result of World War II, there was a shortage of food in Singapore. This led to malnutrition, disease, crime, and violence. There was also high food prices and unemployment, which led to several strikes in 1947. This led to massive problems in public transport. This economic trouble would continue for several years. Singapore also separated from the Malay Peninsula and became an independent city-state. Japan occupied Indonesia during World War II. Sukarno led the independence movement of Indonesia, and he declared Indonesian independence in 1945. This declaration of independence shocked most Indonesians and led to a wave of revolutions. What was the name of the period between this Declaration of Independence and the year of 1949, when the Dutch actually recognized Indonesian independence? That's right! The Indonesian National Revolution. The Dutch struggled to take down the Indonesians. The revolution destroyed the colonial administration of the Dutch East Indies. The Dutch wanted to regain control of Indonesia, and they initially had the support of Britain and the US. The Dutch thought of the East Indies as their home before the war, so to keep this possible, they did not allow Indonesians to gain better education or enter the civil service.
But what about the education?
After the war, Indonesians did not want to return to the condition of serving under the Dutch. So they put together a guerrilla army, and once the Dutch lost support from the UN and the US, they allowed Indonesia to become independent in 1949. For my sources for this project, I used my world history textbook, an online site through the Washington Post, and also 3 online articles titled History of Malaysia, Post-War Singapore, and Indonesian National Revolution. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this.